see a zombie child in the middle of the road. He snarls and walks around until he is run over. We see a Humvee drive down the road as Sean looks back at what he did, but decides to keep driving. He drives past many abandoned cars and travel bags. He slows down and stops the car. He looks, seeing a pack of zombies inside one of the cars. He looked closer, seeing it was a family that turned. He sees the dad in the driver's seat, mom in the passenger seat, and the kid in the back. He looked like he was about 10 or so years old before the crash. Sean stopped looking and got out. Hours later, at nighttime, we see him laying their dead bodies in the grass next to one another. It then starts to rain as he looks up. At night, we see it pouring as Sean hides inside the crashed car for the night. Sean tosses and turns in the back, unable to sleep, as he feels a sense of dread. The next morning, he gets his bag, pulls out some food, and eats something before boiling a can of water and brushing his teeth. Sean then pulls out and looks at his map as he places his finger over the marked Greensville. We see him walking all alone as he sees a road marker. He compares it to his map and walks back. He packs up and gets back inside the Humvee. He pulls out the keys and starts it up as he drives off, leaving the family behind as they all lay beside one another. In an abandoned town, we see the Humvee as Sean gets out. He takes his gun holster and his bag before leaving the Humvee. In the woods, we see something watching him. Sean does a short shout as he sees a few zombies coming out of the store towards him. Sean gets his machete and slices one in the leg as it drops down. Sean swings down, penetrating its skull with the machete as he forcibly pulls it out. He then kills the rest of them, one by one. He then looks inside the store, seeing all of the shelves. Sean looked around the store, seeing bottles of water and other assorted products everywhere. He sees a bunch of rats on one of the shelves. They scatter, running away from him. He looks, seeing torn boxes of cookies and other food products that have spoiled. He sighs. Looks like everything is barely getting by these days, he said. Sean continued to look around the store, seeing bathroom products. There was one roll of toilet paper left, so he takes it before seeing multiple toothbrushes and other hygiene supplies. He further explores the store, seeing some baby products. He looked at them, grabbing a bottle. As he looked at it, very sad. Suddenly, he heard an alarm go off. He got startled as it was coming from outside. Outside, we see a dirty couple trying to hotwire his Humvee. The horn was loud sounding. Come on, hurry! The woman said. I'm trying! The man shouted. Suddenly, we see Sean raising his gun. Back away from my car! Sean said to them. They looked, seeing Sean very serious, aiming the gun at them. They raised their hands. Hey, kid, relax, easy. We don't want any trouble, he said. Well, you're trying to steal my car. That's a lot of trouble for me, he said. Just back away now, he ordered them. The woman smiled. How old are you? She asked. I said back away from my car, he shouted more. Okay, the man said, getting out. Look, my wife Carrie and I are just trying to survive. Same as you. Same as anybody, he said. If you leave us out here, we'll die, he said, trying to make Sean guilty. I'm sorry, but I can't let you take my car, he said. But you're just a kid, and you seem alone, he said. Who are you? Do you have a family? She asked. Where are you going? She asked. Nowhere, he said. Well, if you're going nowhere, then why do you need this car? He asked. Nowhere you need to know, he said back. Look, I don't want any trouble either. There's some supplies in the store here. Just leave me alone and take what you need, he said. You seem scared, the woman said. Sean kept aiming his gun, unsure of what to do. He tried to move forward, but he kept hesitating. Please, you don't know how hard it's been for us out here. We won't survive out here much longer. The scraps and the dead, he said. Sorry, but it's not my problem. I have enough problems on my own, he said. You seem like a good kid, she said, coming closer. Stay back or I'll shoot! Sean said. Carrie! The man said nervously. We'll die out here. Is that something your mother would be proud of? She said, closer to Sean. Don't talk about her! He fired his gun multiple times as the bullets hit her. She dropped downwards, collapsing as the man shouted. No! He shouted. Sean stood over her, shocked. No! Carrie! What did you do? You fucking monster! He shouted. Sean was shocked with what he did when the man charged for him. Sean tried to run, but the man tackled him, dropping the gun as he grabbed Sean's face before punching him. Sean kicked the man, trying to escape, but he was getting overpowered. Sean reached for his knife and slashed him in the gut. As Sean stabbed into him, the man gasped, holding his gut as he finally got off of Sean. Sean took his gun and fired. He landed by the car. Sean fired his gun multiple times, filling him full of holes. He suddenly saw another man charging with a crowbar. The man was screaming as Sean ducked from the crowbar, barely missing him. Sean backed away as a walker grabbed him. Sean screamed as he tried to break free. Fucking brat! The man shouted. The walker snarled at him. Sean grabbed his neck, pushing it. The man swung the crowbar at Sean, but Sean moved as the man barely missed. Sean dropped his gun as both the walker and him fell over. You fucking murderer! The man said. He saw the gun and went for it. Sean pushed the walker off of him as the man grabbed the gun and started firing. Sean used the walker as a shield until it was filled with holes. We see the walker snarl at him. Fuck! The walker bites him as he screams. The walker tears his flesh. He fires his gun, killing the zombie, when we see Sean taking the crowbar and swings it right into his hand. He smacks the gun out of his hand before slamming him in the underbelt. The man screamed as Sean broke everything. Sean pulled a second gun from his bag as Sean aimed his gun. Fuck you! He shouted before killing the man. Sean took heavy breaths. Sean then clung into his body. He had bruises and was hurting. He then heard something. It sounded like a liquid. He looked, seeing that the car was leaking. The underside of the Humvee was leaking fluid. No, 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 no! No! He shouted. The gas line was leaking. Hours later, we see Sean walking all by himself. Sean was dirty and exhausted. He then looked, seeing walkers in the woods, and was running to avoid them. Behind him were headlights coming from the ridge. As Sean turned around, "Shit," he said, running into the side of the road. He landed quickly on the ground, covering himself with a blanket in the grass as the vehicle was coming closer. We see the Humvee full of Patriots stop as the soldiers look around. Nothing. Keep moving, one said as they drove off. Sean waited until they were completely gone and finally breathed, fully relieved. In the middle of the night, Sean was walking in the woods. He saw a shed and began to head towards it. He looked inside, opening the door as he gagged. He looked, aiming his gun and flashlight as he saw the bodies inside. Skeletons of little kids, some with stuffed animals. They looked like two boys and a girl. They were little. One set of bones was very small, looked like baby bones. Sean looked at their horrid corpses as he began to hear crying and screaming inside of his own head. He heard the cries getting louder and louder as he backed away, shutting the door in fear. Sean panicked as he ran in the opposite direction. Sean panicked, running in the forest. As he ran, he kept having flashes of scary thoughts. Zombies devouring people, his mom getting killed, the death of Carla. Suddenly, a walker was right in front of him as Sean accidentally crashed in. Sean and the walker tumbled over as he got up and backed away. Sean tried to run and sprint away, looking back when he turned as a branch was right in front of him. Sean clashed, hitting right into the hard branch as he toppled down. Everything was fuzzy as Sean's head was bleeding. Monster! You're a monster! Monster! He heard a voice say. Sean looked around, only seeing the zombie. The zombie was right in front of him and stopped. Sean was scared, noticing it was staring at him. Monster! It screamed at him. Sean screamed, firing his gun, killing it. The zombie dropped down on the ground as Sean took heavy and deep breaths. He was terrified. This isn't real. This isn't real, he said, as his head was still bleeding. Everything became blurry as he was falling asleep. He closed his eyes as everything went black. We then see a light glowing as it shows Sean's face. His eyes were still closed as he was asleep. His eyes slowly opened as he looked up. Sean gasped as he was finally awake. Sean screamed, "What the?" he shouted before getting up. He checked himself. No bites. He touched his head as there was a small bandage on it. He cringed, feeling some pain. "This is real," he said. He was near a fireplace on the mat, lying on the ground. He looked, seeing he was in a house. "What the hell?" he asked. Sean looked around. It was nighttime, as he saw something insane. He saw a table, and on it was a plate of cookies and milk. Right next to him, he saw a note on it. "Eat up," it said. Sean then heard footsteps, and quickly got up, grabbing a fire poker for a weapon. He looked, seeing a woman enter the room. "Oh, thank the Lord, you're awake, dear." "John, he's awake," she said. "Stay away!" Sean said, nervously. Suddenly, a man enters the room. He was an elderly like her. Sean looked, seeing the elderly couple, probably in their 70s from the looks of it. Sean was ready. "Easy, Susan, you'll scale the boy," he said. "Who are you people?" he asked. "I'm John Walker," he said. "And this is my wife, Susan." "What's your name?" he asked. Sean was hesitant to answer and looked to them. Susan had glasses and short white hair that was curly. The man, John, had a simple button lumberjack outfit on with loose jeans. "I want to leave right now. Where's my stuff?" he asked. "Oh, easy, boy. It's dark now. It's not safe for a boy your age." "Don't call me boy!" he shouted. There was a silence. "But you're a boy, aren't you? You're a teenager, I'm certain. How old are you?" he asked. "I want to leave," Sean said. "Love, he's frightened," she said, concerned. John took hold of his wife. "Then he can leave." John points his hand. "The door is right down that way," he said. Sean looked and moved over. The man and woman looked at each other. "Love, you can't let him leave like this. It's dangerous," she said. "If the young man wants to go, we have no business keeping him here," he said. Sean packed his bags. "Hey, where are my guns?" Sean asked. We see John going over and gathering the 3 handguns. Sean looks and nervously takes them, making sure he doesn't get tricked at the last minute. Sean took back his guns and pocketed them. "I know it's dark out there right now. The ghouls are dangerous this late at night," he said. "I'll be fine," Sean said and phased. "I hope that's true. Just be careful. It's a dangerous world out there, young man," he said. "You can come back here if you need to," Susan said. "That's not necessary," Sean said. "Oh, and watch out for the traps," he said. "Traps?" Sean asked, turning around. "Yeah, we get foxes around this area. There are food traps near little places with food, and there's also some barbed wire around the property," he said. Sean thought about it. "I'll be careful," he said. "Are you sure you won't change your mind?" John asked. Sean hesitated and then answered. "I'm sure," he said, walking away and leaving. Sean closed the door behind him. Sean looked unsure as he looked into the night sky. "No way they're that nice." It was very dark. The owls hooted. Sean heard talking back inside the house and looked, spying on the elderly couple. He saw them both go to each other and slowly get on their knees. Sean watched as they began to pray. Sean made out a few sentences as he heard his name mentioned. Sean was surprised. However, he ignored it. "I can't stay here. I need to find Greensville," he said, going down the steps. Sean took his flashlight out as he looked. He saw a few areas with metal bowls and food in them. He avoided the traps as he looked, seeing the road. He followed it and made it to the end, seeing barbed wire right in front of him. A walker was stuck on the wire. Sean took his machete out as he was about to kill her. Suddenly he heard something behind him and turned around, pulling his gun out. "Stay back!" he said. When he looked, only seeing a squirrel. Sean relaxed, wondering why his instinct was so off. Sean killed the walker. We then see Sean walking by himself in the night as he looks around for directions. Sean saw the road signs, but they were too damaged to read. "Come on," he said. Sean couldn't read it. Suddenly, he heard a herd of walkers blocking the road, and a massive wind was coming. He was beginning to freeze. "Fuck!" he said. In the morning, we see Sean walking as he aims his gun as he walks back to the house. Sean was hesitant as he came back to the property. He had his gun, nervous. What are you doing, Sean? Sean said. Sean was exhausted and tired. You see Sean continued walking, as he was very uncomfortable. Hello? He shouted. The man appeared from the corner, carrying a bucket. Hey, you're back, he said, smiling. Mind helping me out with some chores after that? We can go get you something to eat, he asked. Sean looked at him, perplexed. Later we see them doing chores, as Sean was scrubbing and scraping moss and other gross stuff from the side of the house. That's good. I can never reach that spot, he said, as he used sanding paper. So how old are you? He asked. 14. Or maybe 15, Sean said. We then see them tossing corn in a chicken coop. How did you and your wife survive so long out here? Sean asked. Well, we live in a simple farmhouse in the woods, 5 miles off the main road. Am I the first person you've met since the walkers came? He asked. Walkers? John asked. Yeah, the dead, he said. Susan and I call them ghouls. It would have been weird if we called them by our last name, he said. I guess that makes sense. We've had an occasional wanderer pass by here and there, but it's always the same. They stop for one night and go to look for their families, he said. Sean looked at him. You shouldn't take people. It's dangerous. They'll try to rob you, or worse, he said. I'm aware of the danger of strangers, he said. Then why do it? Sean asked. Because the wife and I haven't seen our son in over 5 years. We're not afraid of dying. I'm 74 years old, and I don't care. Doing some good before I go will be worth it, he said. What about you, son? You seem like you're running from something, he said. Sean tried to speak when he heard a metal sound clinking. Susan was ringing a metal bell. Love, breakfast is ready, she said from the porch. I'm coming, hon, he said, excited. And prepare another play. The kid's back, he said. Sean and John went inside the house. We see the couple sitting down as Sean looks at the food. Susan smiled. I hope you're hungry, dear. And afterwards, if you want, you could take a rest, she said. He saw eggs, hash browns, and fruit. Why don't we wash up first? He said. Sean looked at his hands, seeing the grime on them. While washing his hands, he looks on the mirror. What are you doing, Sean? He looked, seeing the wooden message on the mirror. Clean hands, clean soul. Sean scoffed at the cringy message. He then went to the table as the couple was ready for him. Sean was a little nervous, gun still holstered in his back pocket. Thank you for joining us, Sean. Would you like to say grace? Susan asked. It's all right, hon. He's a guest. I'll do it, he said. They closed their eyes and offered their hands as they prayed. Sean looked as they sat down. He didn't hold their hands and watched. Lord, please bless the hands that have made this food. Thank you for watching over your servants and Sean. Please continue to watch over us and Joseph, wherever he is, in these dire and uncertain times, when there's so much wrong with the world. Give us strength to face this day. Amen. The couple said. They finally started to eat as Sean dug in. He was very hungry as they watched on. Slow down, dear. You're going to choke like that, Susan said. Here, drink something. Help wash it down. John gave him some juice. Sean finished his food. Thank you, he said, taking it. Sean looked as he continued smiling. Afterwards, we see Susan handing Sean some bandages. Would you like some help with that, dear? She asked. No, thank you. He took it. Oh, that looks awful. It's okay. I've had worse, Sean said. I'm so sorry. A boy your age shouldn't have to go through so much, she said. I can handle it. My dad and brother took great care of me when this all happened. Almost 4 years ago, he told her. What happened to your family? Your son, he asked. Susan was a little saddened. John and I wanted to go so badly and find him, but we're so old. We weighed it over the years, but in the end, John and I decided to wait for him to come back. She showed her arm, and it was full of veins and misshapenness. I've had arthritis for 25 years. We can barely get out of the bed every single morning. We decided to wait every single day for Joseph to come back. But it's been years, he said. How do you know he's even still alive? He asked. We don't, she said. Then why believe it? He asked. Because that's how we keep going. Faith. We have no proof he's still out there, but faith is when you believe you will get through anything when life gives you every reason to give up. It helps us wait. It gives us strength. I have faith in my husband, and we have faith that one day our son will come back. But what if you're just setting yourself up to be disappointed? He asked. Life is too beautiful to dwell on the ifs. You need to appreciate and enjoy all the good moments. There's so much sadness in the world, and you can't gather strength from expecting the worst in life. Faith in God see us through. Ghouls will eventually go away one day. One day when you're our age, you'll see God finally bring peace again to the world, she said. Sean listened, unsure. The next day, John and Sean were walking around the property as they looked at the barbed wire. It's a lot of barbed wire. This trap is amazing, Sean said. Why, thank you, son, he told him. Yeah, my pa always told me if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, he said. My dad didn't really do that. He was always working. And my other dad, he taught me other things, he told him. You had two fathers? Yeah, Sean. Yeah, when everything happened, my dad was off on a business trip. I haven't seen him since, and my mom died not long after. She saved me from soldiers who didn't believe murder was wrong. My older brother saved me from them, and this man, also named John, believe it or not, took care of me, but the same thing eventually happened to him too. I said goodbye, expecting I was going to see him again, but he died and I wasn't there. Maybe if I had been, I could have saved him, but I can't go back or change time. What happened happened, and I have to move on and remember him and everything he taught and did for me because he'll always be with me, he said. That's right, Sean. Our memories of the people who died before give us strength because we don't carry them with us. They carry us. This world is a cruel place, but it's because of the people in it. Even before the ghouls came into the world, we had corruption, school shootings, and people thought the world was coming to an end, but then, he said, but then the world really did end, he said. No, it didn't, John said. What the hell are you talking about? Of course it did, Sean said. How? John asked him. The dead coming back to life, Sean said. But the dead coming back to life, that's a virus, right? He asked. Yeah, it's a virus in all of us. We're all infected with it. So when we die, we all turn. Nothing left from who we were when you become a walker. Aren't you scared? What if your wife or you pass in your sleep? And he said, John and him continued to walk. In life, people always think about what if. What if I did something different? What if I acted better? What if I could change this? The more we think about what if, the more we lose sight of the what is in front of us, he said. What ifs are fun, but they don't change anything. You said the world ended, but there's still a lot of people left in it. Kids can still be born. Food can still grow. No earthquakes or tidal waves or fire raining down from the heavens. The dead coming back. That's not the end of the world. That wasn't God's plan. I believe that we did that, Sean, John said. Maybe, Sean said, unsure. Do you get a lot of ghouls on the fences? Sean asked. Not normally, but they've been popping out more and more, he said. I think it's because when the dead don't find any prey in the city and towns, they migrate to the woods, he told him. Migrate? Like birds? Can't be. That's impossible, he said. Impossible? Sean said, confused. 4 years ago, scientists would have said the dead coming back to life is impossible. Now, it's the most normal thing in our lives, he told him. I mean, I get they're dead. They're husks, ghouls. Nothing about the person from before remains. The soul is gone. For every single one of them, he said. But if that's the case, then why would they migrate into other areas for food? They're not animals. They seem alive, in some way, he said. I don't know, Sean said. They're dead, but they can be tricked with sound and stuff. My friend tricked a ghoul into eating another, he revealed. John looked at him amazed. Yeah, it probably doesn't mean much, but it really makes you wonder if the dead really are dead, or if they'll ever evolve, he said. Don't tell me you believe in that evolution garbage they used to teach in school, John said. No, I didn't. At least not about the part where we came from freaking monkeys. But I believed in a lot of the other stuff, like adapting. Humans adapted for the thousands of years we've been on the planet. Animals too. Plants too. Maybe the dead could evolve too. Who knows? Sean said, unsure. Suddenly, he heard screaming. What the hell is that? He asked. Not again, John said. John and Sean ran into the woods as they saw a little fox all by itself trying to break free from a rope trap. Its neck was stuck as it continued to scream, trying to break free itself from the rope tightened. It's just another fox, he said. John pulled out a knife. You're just gonna let it go, right? Sean asked. Sorry, Sean, but I can't. These foxes, they keep getting past the wire, and this little one won't make it on his own, he said. You can't! Sean said. Sean stopped him. It's not right! It's just a baby! You don't have to kill it! It won't survive without its mother, he said. How do you know? Look at me! My mom died almost 4 years ago, and I still was able to go back to people who loved and took care of me. I know this is your land, but you can't kill it. Hasn't there been enough killing in the world? When we start killing babies, it's just wrong, whether it's human or not. We have to tell the difference. We have to sometimes show mercy, even if it's probably means something not working out, because then you'll truly be desensitized to killing. I have killed almost 10 people, and trust me, I'll never forget it. But killing a baby, it's not right. It has every right to live and grow up, even if it dies not long after, because there's always a chance. Please, Sean said. Oh, all right, John said. John bent over and cut the wire, freeing the fox. He was scared and ran off, leaving the property. John stood back up and smiled as Sean thanked him. How did you get so smart? John asked him. Sean smiled. My family, he said. I hope to meet him one day, John said. In the next few days, we see Sean living on the Walker farm. We see him helping do chores around the place, like cleaning and gardening with Susan, as he looked incredibly happy. We see him chopping firewood, as he comes back into the house, carrying them very fast. Slow down, kid, John said. Why don't you take a break? Susan said, handing him a glass of water. I will, he said, before going back. It's nighttime, and we see everyone eating dinner together. In his room, we see Sean was sitting on the bed looking at a photo of Benjamin and the family. He laid it downwards as he exhaled. I'm sorry, guys. I miss you. I want to see you guys again. It's just, he said. I hope you guys don't hate me. I know it's dangerous to trust people, but they seem good. You would like them, Ben. You wanted me to find somewhere to be safe, and I did. I'll come back, I promise, he said. Sean turned off the lamplight and held onto the photo. He placed it close to his heart and went to sleep. 2 days later, in the house, we see Sean looking around. Is this your son? He asked. No, that's just a strange boy we spent a lot of time with, he joked. Sean looked annoyed at him. Yes, that's our boy, Joseph, he said. What happened to him? He asked. Same thing that happens to everyone. They get older and move on, he said, as Sean looked at all the pictures of them fishing, hunting. They looked so happy. He went to upstate Charleston for school, and we never heard from him again when everything happened, he stated. Sean was kind of saddened by that. He could still be alive, I suppose, Sean said. We know he is, John said. That reminds me. I was going to go into town to pick up some supplies. Would you like to come with me? Appreciate the company, he said. On the road, we see John wheeling a wheelbarrow. Sean took on the front, killing any walkers that got in their way. How often do you go into town? Sean asked. Not often. Just a few times in the last 3 years, he said. They made it to a small town area with a few shops. Here we are, he said, as Sean looked around. It seemed safe enough. As Sean and him walked to the hardware store, Sean looked, seeing a dead walker on the ground. It was a woman. As he stared at it, he immediately thought back to his mother that night, as she died, as he ran away into the hardware store. "Sean?" he heard John call out. Sean snapped out of it. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," he said, lying. Inside the store, they were putting stuff into the wheelbarrow as Sean brings a shopping cart from next door. "Good idea, boy," John said as he stuffs the wheelbarrow, canisters of kerosene, varnish, brushes, and barbed wire. "What do we need all of this for?" he asked. "Need to do some repairs, and maybe even make the fences stronger," he said. When suddenly, they heard a crash coming from the back as Sean and him were spooked. "Shh," he said, as Sean was behind him as he arrived at the back door. Suddenly a walker came out covered in barbed wire as a team of biters followed suit, but went the other way, blocking Sean. The walkers blocked the both of them. Sean aimed his gun, firing it several times, but it clicked empty. "Shit!" he said. Sean then took his machete and slashed one on the head as it bashed against a shelf. The shelf knocked backwards as it collapsed right next to John. He fell with the shelf as it crushed and pinned him. Sean was blocked by the dead as he raced around, seeing a few at the store blocking him. John was still pinned as the barbed wire zombie was stuck moving as a long piece of barbed wire was jammed in the doorway. Sean used the shopping cart and ran through them as he raced around the store. The zombie got free as it now went to John, but Sean grabbed the long piece of barbed wire, pulling it away from John. The zombie was pulled backwards as it spinned around like a top. Sean finished pulling as the wire was pulling against his neck before slicing its head off with the barbed wire. Sean then dropped it as he reloaded his gun. He aimed it and fired at the oncoming horde. That night, we see Susan treating John's leg and hands that were cut from the accident earlier today. "You should have been there, Susan. The boy killed all of them, saving my ass," he said. "Yes, I, meanwhile, have to stitch up yours," she emphasized. John chuckled as Sean smiled, sitting down. One day later, Sean and John were walking together inside the woods, outside the property. They were being very quiet as he got his attention before pointing downwards at some animal tracks. Sean looked at them and nodded. They kept going through the forest, being as quiet as possible. They both carried rifles as they heard eating. Sean aimed his rifle as they moved from one bush to another. There was a deer eating shrubs in the meadow. John aimed his rifle. He was taking his time, setting his sights, finger on the trigger. A loud rang, startling John. He looked, seeing the deer drop dead. John looked, seeing that it was Sean who fired his gun, killing the deer, as his gun was smoking. John was amazed. "Nice shot, son," John complimented him. "Thank you," he said. "What a fine catch," I told him. "You hunt a lot?" he asked. "With your family from before?" Sean thought back to all the times he had to practice firearms and kill. "No, never hunted once," he told him. "Ah, natural talent then," he said. Sean smiled. "I learned from the best," he said. "Oh, dagnabbit, shoot," he said. "What?" Sean asked. "I forgot to bring damn rope," he said. "We can drag it back to the house," Sean said. "Ah, nah, I don't mind," he stated. "No, it's all right. It'll take 5 minutes. Would you mind watching the deer until I come back?" he asked. "No, I don't mind. I can watch it." John patted him on the shoulder. "Good man," he said. "I'll be right back," he said, as Sean smiled at the man complimenting. He sat down next to the deer and looked at it before thinking of Benjamin and the others. A gunshot erupted. Sean turned back, shocked at the loud sound. "What the hell?" he asked. Sean left the deer running as fast in the woods as he could back to the house. He was scared and worried. Another shot was fired, distracting him, as he missed a root and tripped, falling as he landed, brown face first in the grass. "Shit," he said, before hearing voices. Another shot fired as Sean looked. He crunched over, seeing multiple armed men around the house. He was quiet and looking closer before seeing they were Patriots. "Fuck," he said, horrified. "Where is the boy? We know he came through this area," a man shouted. Sean looked when the soldier got angry, before punching down, hitting John in the face as he fell to the ground. Sean was horrified and aimed his gun. Suddenly he looked as there were more men bringing Susan from the house. She had blood pouring from her head. "Susan!" he said. "No! No! No!" he cried, devastated. Sean was horrified as he kept watching. The man was still angry. He then aimed right at his head. "Last fucking chance. Where's the boy?" he asked him. John's tears stopped as he looked at the man. "Just kill me." "I'll never tell you," he said, before the man fired his gun, shooting John in the head. Sean covered his face in horror as he took cover to avoid being seen. "Jesus, man," a soldier said. "Do we really have to kill them?" he asked. "You heard the general. That boy is high priority. We have to find him. Take a team with you and keep looking. Maybe he's back on the road. Me and the others will stay here and sweep the area," he stated. Sean stopped crying and began to run. Hours later, in the middle of the night, we see the men sweeping the streets as they look for Sean. "Anything?" one soldier asked. "Nothing." "Fuck this. Let's just tell him we killed the kid," they stated. "Caden wants him alive. He'll never believe us without a body," they stated. In the woods, Sean watched on, being careful to stay hidden and not be seen. The men continued to spread out and search when suddenly they saw walkers in the street. "Incoming biters!" the soldier said. "I got him," he said when he grabbed one of the walkers in the head, as Sean emerged from the horde covered in guts and stabbed him in the side as the man was horrified. Suddenly he was swarmed and getting devoured as he shouted in agony. The other Patriots looked on. "Holy shit!" they said as they fired their guns. Back in the house, the Patriots heard the gunfire. "What the hell is that?" they asked. They got on the radio and asked for a status as Sean disappeared from the horde, taking cover beside a wrecked car as he fired his rifle. He fired, killing 2 Patriots in a surprise attack. The last one got on his radio. The others fired their guns and booked it when one was shot in the neck and the other in the arm. The walkers were still coming, so they all ran off from the road. The zombies were feeding on the fallen Patriots. There was one man barely alive as Sean stood over him. Sean fed him to the zombie as the man screamed. Sean watches as the zombie tears into his face, devouring him as he leaves the man to suffer. In the house, we see the other Patriots make it to the house as they reported how they were attacked in the woods by an unknown shooter. "We should get the fuck out of here," one said. "No, we should call for Caden and backup," another said. "No, we're too far out. Our radios don't work," another said. "Everyone shut the fuck up now! It's probably that fucking kid. I am ashamed of you all. You're letting a fucking snot-nosed brat make a complete fool out of us. Now I want you to all go back out there and find that fucking kid, or I will personally see to it that you all never set foot in Helios ever again," he said. "What should we do?" they asked. "This kid wants us to go outside. He wants us to split off from each other one by one," he said. "But if we go as a group, we'll catch him. He's just one fucking kid. And watch out for any more groups of the dead out there. The kid could be using them to his advantage," he said, as Sean was listening in from the window. Suddenly, a soldier turned around. "Hold on, I just saw something outside," he shouted. "You sure?" he asked him. "I'm sure," he said. "I know I saw something out there," he stated. "All right, I'll go check it out. You 3, stay here, and you 2, come with me," he stated. Sean went to the corpses of the Walker family and took some keys off of them. As the men searched in the woods, we see Sean in the shed grabbing tools, a tarp, varnish, and kerosene too, as he moved quietly through the forest. We see a group of walkers in the woods as Sean stood before them getting their attention. Time would pass as we would see a group of biters tied up as Sean took out some raincoats, tarps, duct tape, and blades. He then began to put knives through their throat and duct tape them on their arms as he goes to the fence with some pliers. He cuts off the barbed wire with it as he began to pull it out. Sean then tied a walker with barbed wire. Sean then started to paint the walkers in varnish as he then walked back to the road. He then looked at the Humvees left behind and looked down at the corpses of the men he killed earlier. He bends down to one of them, one that was shot in the head, as Sean pulls out his hatchet before swinging it downwards, spraying blood on himself. The soldiers were annoyed. "This is a complete waste of fucking time. We looked everywhere and he's still not here," one Patriot said. Suddenly, they saw a figure in the woods. "Over there!" they shouted. They went forward as another walker was dragging a rope of noisy cans. "Wait, is that?" he asked. The soldier aimed his flashlight, seeing it was a fresh walker, a former Patriot. "Shit! It's Fuller!" he said as the walker grabbed him. Knives sank into his body as Fuller had blades taped to his arms. The man coughed blood as Fuller started devouring him. "Fuck!" a soldier shouted. Another soldier began to take his machete and slash several walkers in the head. Suddenly he saw something sticky on it. More were coming at him as the soldier pushed it. Suddenly, a sticky substance was on his hands and the walkers. It smelled terrible. "What the fuck?" he said. "Watch out!" the other shouted. Another Patriot slashed a walker, killing it, as another one covered in barbed wire came right at him. He slashed it again, but the barbed wire protected its head as it clashed with the blade. The walker grabbed him, piercing him with the barbed wire as he screamed. In the back of the house, Sean unlocks the cellar door and goes inside. Sean goes into the basement. He hears the Patriots arguing above him. Sean takes his gun out. Sean goes inside, gun raised, as we see the Patriots looking through the windows and door. It was clear. Sean moved forward and went around. He saw one man looking at the door and windows. "What's going on out there? Where are the others?" he thought. As Sean moved through the house, he heard something and ducked. "Seeing some infected out there," he stated. Suddenly, they began to hear a gunshot from outside. "What the fuck?" A Patriot got on his radio, demanding an explanation for that shot. Sean looked and turned on the stove, setting it to a boil as he moved away. Outside, a Patriot tried to push a walker off of him and grabbed his neck, trying not to get bit. The walker was slimy and sticky with varnish as he pushed him off. As he did, the walker's face ripped off as it stayed stuck to his hand. The Patriot was holding the walker's face as it growled back at him with skinless, exposed face. Inside the house, the pot in the kitchen caught fire as the flames erupted. A Patriot smelled it. "Shit! Fire!" he shouted. Sean came out of the cellar and fired his gun, killing the man. Suddenly, a bullet was fired, nearly hitting him as a Patriot was gunning after him. "He's in the house!" he shouted. In the cellar, Sean quickly hid in the cellar as the remaining Patriots made it into the cellar. They looked outside. The cellar door was open. "Check outside!" he ordered. He got on the radio and warned the others. Sean pulled his pliers and threw them to the other side. He broke a bottle. The Patriot aimed his gun, aiming his flashlight. "It's over, kid," he said. Sean ran forward, jumping on his back before stabbing into the man. He stabbed him repeatedly as he landed backwards, smashing into a table. The Patriot kept bleeding all over Sean as he collapsed. We then see the Patriot come back into the cellar. He aims his gun when he steps over some blood. "What the hell?" he asked. He then saw his comrade bleeding on the ground. He rushed over to him. "Fuck!" Suddenly, 2 shots were fired as he collapsed to the ground as Sean stood behind him. Sean then kicked him in the head and took his gun off of him. He then grabbed a crowbar. Sean then walked over to the both of them. He looked at the man he stabbed prior and swung down his weapon on his head. Sean grunted as he smashed his head in with the weapon, killing him, as the other man tried to crawl away in horror. As he did, he collapsed as Sean was on top of him. "I'm not done with you," Sean said, as he smashed the weapon on his hand. The man screamed in pain. "Just let me go! Please!" he screamed. Sean then flipped him over, kicking him. He looked him in the eye. "I am," he said coldly, as he raised his bloody crowbar again and swung down on the terrified Patriot. Sean screamed and grunted as he smashed the metal pipe into his head over and over again, bashing the man in the head. The sun finally rose at dawn, as we see the bodies of the Patriots killed the night before being burned. Sean looked on indifferently at his brutality, as he then took a shovel. He started to dig as time passed. Sean carefully took the wrapped bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Walker. He went into the hole, carefully lowering himself in as he was on the ground, and began to grab the shovel and finish the burial. He placed the last of the dirt covering the holes as he then went inside the house. He came back with small wooden crosses as he laid them over the graves. He used a knife, carving some initials on them before he was done. He put Mr. Walker's hat on top of his and put Mrs. Walker's glasses over her grave. Sean bent down as he finally started. So sorry I got the both of you killed. You were both good people. Too good for this shitty and fucked up world like this, he cried. I never had to bury someone I cared about before, he said. It was always John or Benjamin doing it, he said. If I had just left when I did, they wouldn't have followed us back here and you both. It's because of me. I was scared to leave again. I was scared of being out there on the road by myself again, and even if I did make it to Greensville, we would have still been under the Patriots. No Benjamin, Tyler, Rachel, or Merle. I missed them so much. If I wasn't a fucking coward and just left, you two would still be alive, he said. I lose everyone I care about. I'm not meant to have a normal life. I'm not meant to be happy with anyone. Because that's not the world I can live in. This is the world I'm in, and it's cruel, he cried. John, Susan, thank you both for taking care of me this week. I had fun for the first time in a long time. I was happy and felt safe. I trusted you both. If you see John and my friends and my parents, can you tell them I miss them, please? He asked. I really hope they're not disappointed in me, but they probably are. God, I messed up. I wish I hadn't, but I did, he said. Sean took deep breaths. You two deserve better than dying like this, but at least you two don't have to suffer anymore. And you died together, which I know is what you wanted, he said. I have to go now. I can't stay here anymore, he said. I have a family to get back to. They've waited long enough, and I can't give up. I have to keep going, he said, getting up. Thank you both. Rest well, Sean said, leaving the graves. An hour later, we see that Sean was all dressed and packed up as he walked outside the front door. He closed the door, leaving the porch. As he walked on the path, he took one last look at the property. He barely could make out the graves. On the road, Sean got inside one of the Hunters and started up as he began to drive away. Here lies Mr. and Mrs. Walker, two of the best people that were left in the end of the world. We should show respect to them in this house. They lived well, and now they rest, it said on the board. 3 days later, everything was dark as Sean opened his eyes. He was cold and woozy. He looked around, up the dark ceiling with a small light. He was sitting in a makeshift bed as he slowly got up. He was very tired as he felt some pain in his neck. His neck had a mark on it from something. He saw a figure move past him as he tried to call out to it. Suddenly, Sean fell off the bed face first as he landed hard on the cold, hard ground. Sean saw long poles as he began to crawl towards them. Sean made it, but couldn't go anymore, as he was face first with a set of bars. He grabbed them as he slowly pulled himself up. It was a gate. He was in a cell. He looked around, seeing he was not the only one. As he looked around, seeing dozens and dozens of other people in the other cells all around him. He was their prisoner.